The cry in the darkness, the quantum communication. Array aboard the human exploration vessel, Aurora's Dawn had been silent for 3 days. Captain Maria Santos preferred it that way. Deep space exploration meant long stretches of peaceful solitude, broken only by the occasional scientific discovery or routine check-in with Earth Command. At 38 years old, Maria had spent the better part of 2 decades pushing the boundaries of known space, mapping new systems and cataloging alien life forms for the growing human database. Then the emergency signal shattered the silence. The transmission came through on frequencies reserved for the most desperate of circumstances. Maria's communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, nearly fell from her chair as the alien voice burst through their speakers. The words were translated by the ship's advanced linguistic processors, but the raw emotion behind them needed no interpretation. This is Keth Nara of the Zealothi Science Collective, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. The voice trembled with barely contained panic. Our homeworld of Zelara Prime is under attack by entities we cannot comprehend. They consume energy itself, draining the life from our cities, our people, our very atmosphere. We estimate 48 hours before total planetary extinction. Maria immediately ordered her crew to full alert status. She had encountered many species during her exploration missions, but she had never heard such pure terror in an alien voice. The Zealothi were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most advanced civilizations, their mastery of energy manipulation rivaling even the legendary ancients of the core worlds. Sarah, trace that signal. I want coordinates, transmission strength, everything, Maria commanded as she activated the ship's emergency protocols. Dr. Reeves, what do we know about these Zealothi? Dr. Michael Reeves, the ship's xenobiologist, pulled up files on his workstation with practiced efficiency. The Zealothi are silicon-based life forms from the Kepler 438 system. They've achieved a level 7 technological rating, primarily through their ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields and plasma energy. Their society is built around scientific advancement and peaceful exploration. They've never engaged in warfare, Captain. The transmission continued, growing more desperate by the moment. The entities arrived without warning 3 days ago. We call them the Void Swarm. They appear as shifting masses of dark energy that drain power from everything they touch. Our defensive shields lasted mere hours. Our weapons pass through them harmlessly. They are consuming our fusion reactors, our solar collectors, even the electrical impulses in our neural networks. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. An enemy that fed on energy itself was beyond anything in the tactical manuals. But what disturbed her more was what came next. We have sent formal requests for military assistance to the Galactic Council. Kethnera's voice cracked with desperation. They have classified our system as compromised beyond redemption and established a quarantine zone. No Council species will risk exposure to these entities. We are alone. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Maria knew the Galactic Council's reputation for cold pragmatism, but abandoning an entire civilization without even attempting rescue operations violated everything she believed about civilized behavior. The Council's member species had grown comfortable in their advanced technologies and established territories. They had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. Ma'am, Lieutenant Chen interrupted quietly. We're receiving official orders from Earth Command. We're to maintain position outside the quarantine zone and observe only. No direct intervention authorized. Maria stared at the message on her screen, feeling anger building in her chest. The orders were clear and came directly from Admiral Harrison himself. Under no circumstances were human vessels to engage with the unknown entities. The risk to human space was deemed too great. But as she listened to Kethnara's increasingly frantic pleas for help, Maria made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She opened a secure channel on human military frequencies, using her exploration vessel's emergency broadcasting array to reach every human ship within 50 light. This is Captain Maria Santos aboard the Aurora's Dawn, broadcasting to all human vessels on priority military channels. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. We have confirmed reports of an active xenocide event in the Kepler 438 system. The Galactic Council has abandoned an entire species to extinction. I am requesting immediate assistance from all available human vessels for humanitarian rescue operations. She paused, knowing that her next words would likely end her career but save countless lives. Authorization Code Alpha 77. This is a Deathworlder response scenario. All ships are to rendezvous at coordinates 892.445, 221 for immediate deployment. Santos out. The Deathworlder protocols were something unique to human military doctrine. Unlike the Council species, who fought wars with measured responses and calculated risks, humans had earned their reputation through their willingness to charge into impossible situations when civilians were threatened. The term Deathworlder had originally been an insult from other species, commenting on humanity's reckless disregard for personal safety. Humans had adopted it as a badge of honor. Within 6 hours, the first ships began arriving at the rendezvous. Coordinates. Captain Elena Rodriguez brought her heavy assault frigate, Vengeful Spirit, out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from a dozen conflicts in the Outer Rim territories. Behind her came Commander James Park's marine transport Screaming Eagle, loaded with 300 fully equipped space marines and enough firepower to level a small city. The merchant captain, David Kim, arrived in his converted cargo hauler Iron Will, a vessel that had been extensively modified with military-grade weapons and shield systems. His crew of engineers and technicians had spent years perfecting their ship's combat capabilities, turning a simple freight hauler into a formidable weapons platform. But the arrival that made Maria's heart soar was the emergence of Admiral Chenway's flagship, the heavy battlecruiser Indomitable. At 62 years old, Chen was a legend in human space, having commanded successful operations against pirate fleets, hostile alien raiders, and the notorious Syndicate Wars. His ship carried enough firepower to engage an entire enemy fleet, and his crew was among the most experienced in the human navy. As the human fleet continued to grow, Dr. Elena Vasquez, aboard Aurora's Dawn, worked frantically to establish communication with the surviving Zealoty forces. Her expertise in xenolinguistics had made her invaluable during first contact situations, and she quickly began to decode the complex mathematical patterns that the Zealoty used for detailed tactical information. Captain Santos, Dr. Vasquez, called from her station. I've established contact with Kethnara. The situation is worse than we initially understood. The Void Swarm isn't just draining energy, they're learning from it. Each system they consume makes them more sophisticated, more adaptable. The main screen flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional projection of the Zealoty homeworld. What Maria saw made her blood run cold. The planet that should have been glowing with the energy signatures of an advanced civilization was rapidly growing dark. Massive, shadowy forms moved across the surface like living storms, leaving nothing but dead rock in their wake. The entities arrived in what appeared to be a small scout fleet, Kethnora's translated voice filled the bridge. But they reproduced by absorbing our power infrastructure. Every reactor they consume births dozens of new entities. They are now numbered in the millions and have begun spreading to our outer colonies. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communication array as his flagship moved into formation with the growing human fleet. Captain Santos, this is Admiral Chen. We've analyzed the transmission data, and I concur with your assessment. This represents an exponential threat that could spread throughout the galaxy if not contained immediately. Maria smiled grimly. Chen was one of the few flag officers who understood that sometimes military protocol had to take a back seat to moral necessity. His presence legitimized the entire operation and would provide political cover when Earth Command inevitably demanded. Explanations. Admiral, what's our tactical assessment? Maria asked, transferring operational command to the more experienced officer. The Zealothi weapons are based on directed energy systems, which explains why they're ineffective against entities that feed on energy, Chen replied. Human weapons technology, however, relies heavily on kinetic systems, explosive warheads, and what our alien friends call primitive chemical reactions. Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need. The human fleet continued to expand as more ships answered the call. Independent merchants, colonial defense vessels, and even a few civilian craft arrived, their crews determined to prevent another species from facing extinction alone. By the time the last vessels emerged from hyperspace, Maria was looking at the largest human fleet ever assembled for a single operation. Captain Lisa Thompson brought her exploration vessel Northern Lights, equipped with advanced sensor arrays that could map the enemy's movement patterns. The freighter Captain Tom Mueller arrived with his vessel Heavy Lifter, converted into a mobile supply base capable of supporting extended combat operations. Even the notorious smuggler known only as Red Jack appeared with his heavily modified stealth ship, offering his unique skills for the rescue operation. As the fleet prepared to enter the Kepler 438 system, Maria found herself standing on the bridge of Aurora's dawn, looking out at the assembled ships. Each vessel represented crews who had chosen to risk everything for people they had never met, from a species most of them had never heard of before today. Dr. Vasquez, Maria called to her xenolinguist. Send a message to Kethnara. Tell him that the human fleet is inbound. Tell him that no one fights alone while humans still draw breath. The response came back within minutes, transmitted with an energy signature so faint it was barely detectable. We do not understand. Why would your species risk so much for strangers? The Council species have abandoned us as a lost cause. Maria smiled as she composed her reply. Because that's what Deathworlders do. We don't abandon people who need help, and we don't calculate acceptable losses when lives are on the line. Hold on, Kethnara. The cavalry is coming. Asterisk the Deathworlder. Response to Kepler 438 system was a graveyard of light as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. Their sensors immediately registered the devastating scope of the Void Swarm's assault. 3 of the system's 7 planets had gone completely dark, their energy signatures reduced to nothing more than cold rock orbiting a dying star. The 4th planet, Zalera Prime, flickered like a candle in a hurricane. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying tactical displays that showed millions of dark entities swarming across the Zealothi homeworld's surface. His years of military experience had prepared him for many scenarios, but facing an enemy that could reproduce exponentially while feeding on the very technology that powered modern civilization was beyond anything in the tactical manuals. Admiral. Commander Sarah Kim reported from the sensor station. We're detecting massive energy drainage throughout the system. The local star's output has decreased by 12% in just the last 6 hours. These entities aren't just consuming planetary energy sources, they're beginning to drain the star itself. The implications were staggering. If the Void Swarm could drain stellar energy, they would become powerful enough to spread throughout the galaxy like a plague of darkness. Every advanced civilization would become nothing more than fuel for their endless reproduction. Captain Santos Chen activated his communications array. Take Aurora's Dawn and establish contact with any surviving Zealoty forces. We need intelligence on these entities' weaknesses, if they have any. The rest of the fleet will establish a defensive perimeter around the system's outer planets. Maria acknowledged the orders and guided her exploration vessel toward the dying homeworld. As Aurora's Dawn approached Solera Prime, the ship's advanced sensors began detecting scattered pockets of energy signatures hidden beneath the planet's surface. The Zealoty had gone underground, using natural cave systems and deep bunkers to shield themselves from the swarm's energy-draining effects. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically to establish communication with the survivors. After several attempts, she managed to connect with a bunker complex near the planet's northern polar region. The face that appeared on their main screen was unlike anything the human crew had ever seen. Kethnara was tall and elegant, his crystalline features reflecting the dim emergency lighting of his underground shelter. His species had evolved on a high-energy world, their biology dependent on electromagnetic fields in ways that carbon-based life forms could barely comprehend. But now, cut off from their planet's power grid, the Zealoty were slowly dying. Captain Santos Kethnara's translated voice carried overwhelming gratitude mixed with disbelief. Your arrival defies all logical prediction models. No species has ever risked themselves for another without calculating potential benefits or rewards. Maria felt her throat tighten as she saw the desperate conditions in the Zealoty shelter. Hundreds of the crystalline beings huddled together, their normally luminous forms dim and flickering. Children clung to their parents, their small bodies barely maintaining the energy patterns necessary for survival. Kethnara, we need to understand these entities, Maria said gently. What have you learned about them during the attack? The Zealoty scientist transmitted data files that Dr. Vasquez immediately began analyzing. What she found challenged every assumption about the nature of life itself. The Void Swarm appeared to be composed of dark energy, the mysterious force that made up most of the universe's mass, but rarely interacted with normal matter. They're not truly alive in any sense we understand, Dr. Vasquez reported. They're more like ... hungry equations, mathematical patterns that consume energy and use it to replicate themselves. But here's the interesting part. They seem to have trouble processing certain types of chaotic energy patterns. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. Explain chaotic energy patterns, Dr. Closions, Captain. Random chemical reactions, uncontrolled kinetic impacts. The entities are designed to absorb and process organized energy, fusion reactors, solar collectors, even biological neural networks. But they struggle with the random energy released by crude explosive devices. A smile spread across Maria's face as she understood the implications. Human military technology, which other species often derided as primitive and wasteful, might be exactly what was needed to fight these entities. Admiral Chen, did you catch that transmission? I did, indeed, Captain Santos. And I think it's time to show these energy vampires what Deathworld military engineering looks like. All ships, prepare for Operation Controlled Chaos. The human fleet began its assault with a coordination that would have impressed even the most advanced council military strategists, but the tactics they employed were pure human ingenuity. Born from centuries of fighting wars, on a dangerous planet where survival required constant adaptation, Captain Rodriguez's vengeful spirit led the first wave, launching old-fashioned nuclear missiles toward the largest concentrations of void swarm entities. The warheads weren't designed to destroy through energy release, but through the chaotic expansion of superheated gases and radioactive particles. When they detonated, the entities in the immediate vicinity seemed to recoil their dark forms, becoming unstable and fragmented. Commander Park's marine transports launched thousands of kinetic penetrators toward the planet's surface. These weren't energy weapons, but simple metal rods accelerated to incredible velocities through magnetic coils. When they struck the swarm entities, the random energy patterns created by the impacts caused the dark forms to scatter and retreat. But the most devastating attack came from Captain Kim's converted freighter Iron. Will, his engineering crew had spent years perfecting what they called dirty bombs, explosive devices filled with radioactive waste, scrap metal, and chemical compounds that burned with chaotic energy patterns. When these crude weapons detonated among the swarm, entire sections of entities simply dissolved. The Void Swarm, for the first time since their arrival, began to retreat from the advancing human forces. Their dark forms pulled back from population centers, clustering around the planet's remaining power installations, as if seeking shelter from the chaotic energies that humans wielded so effectively. Kethnara watched the battle from his underground shelter with growing amazement. Your weapons technology appears to be specifically designed to combat energy-based entities. How did your species know to develop such systems? Maria laughed, despite the desperate nature of their situation. We didn't. We developed these weapons to fight each other. Humans have been perfecting the art of controlled chaos for thousands of years. We just never realized it would work against cosmic horror stories. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Vasquez discovered that the entity's reproductive cycle could be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses generated by primitive radio transmitters. The human fleet quickly deployed hundreds of old-fashioned broadcasting devices, filling the system with chaotic radio signals that prevented new entities from forming. Admiral Chen coordinated the final assault with the precision of a master tactician and the audacity of a Deathworlder, while the main fleet kept the swarm distracted with constant bombardment. Specialized rescue ships began extracting Zealothi survivors from underground shelters. Captain Thompson's Northern Lights used its advanced sensor arrays to locate hidden survivor camps, while Heavy Lifter deployed mobile hospitals to treat Zealothi suffering from energy depletion. Even Red Jack's stealth capabilities proved invaluable, as his ship could slip past swarm patrols to evacuate survivors from areas too dangerous for larger vessels. The turning point came when Commander Park's Marines established a beachhead on Zelara Prime's surface, using portable fusion reactors modified to burn with chaotic energy patterns. They created safe zones where Zealothi civilians could be gathered for evacuation. The sight of human soldiers risking their lives to protect alien families became a symbol that would inspire interspecies cooperation for generations. Vor Thielen, the Zealothi military commander who had survived the initial assault, stood beside Maria as they watched the evacuation operations from Aurora's Dawn's Bridge. His crystalline features reflected a mixture of gratitude and confusion that transcended species barriers. Captain Santos, "I must ask a question that troubles my understanding," he said through the translation system. "Your fleet has suffered casualties during this operation. 3 of your vessels have been damaged, and 17 of your people have been injured. What do you gain from these sacrifices?" Maria looked out at the human fleet, watching as ships continued to ferry Zealothi, survivors to safety despite the ongoing danger from scattered swarm entities. She thought about how to explain the human concept of doing what was right simply because it was right. "Vorthelon, my species, learned something important during our development. We discovered that the universe is a dangerous place full of things that want to kill you. But we also learned that you don't have to face those dangers alone. When someone cries for help, you answer. When someone needs rescue, you go get them. Not because you expect a reward, but because abandoning people who need help makes you less than human." The final phase of the operation involved something that no other species would have even considered. Rather than simply evacuating the survivors and abandoning the system, Admiral Chen ordered the deployment of what humans called scorched earth tactics. Using specialized vessels equipped with antimatter charges, the human fleet systematically destroyed every remaining energy source in the Kepler 438 system. Fusion reactors, solar collectors, even the planet's natural electromagnetic fields were disrupted by controlled explosions. The goal was not destruction, but starvation. Without energy sources to consume, the remaining void swarm entities would be trapped and eventually dissipate. The operation took 12 hours of constant combat, but when it was finished, the Kepler 438 system was dark and empty. The void swarm had been eliminated, not through superior technology or overwhelming firepower, but through the uniquely human approach of turning their own primitive nature into a weapon. As the human fleet prepared to escort the Zealothi survivors to a new homeworld in Council space, Kethnara transmitted a final message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Today we witness something that our scientists believed impossible, a species that fights not for territory, resources, or survival, but for the simple principle that no sentient being should face extinction alone. We have learned what it means to be defended by Deathworlders, and we will never forget this lesson." Admiral Chen stood on his bridge, looking at the rescued Zealothi civilians aboard the evacuation ships. Thousands of lives had been saved through human courage and ingenuity, but more importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about what it meant to be truly civilized. The Council's response would come later, along with official reprimands and political consequences. But as the human fleet set course for Zealothia refugee settlements, every crew member knew they had done something important. They had proven that being the most dangerous species in the galaxy also meant being willing to use that danger to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The legend of the Deathworlder fleet that answered the aliens' cry for help would spread throughout known space, changing forever how other species viewed humanity's place in the galactic community. Asterisk.